Hello friends! You're watching the 5th episode of the free course series, Awakening 3D Models. In the last episode, we added IK to our rig and saw how amazing it is. Then, we added a pole target to make its movement even better. We also learned about copy transforms, copy location, and damped track. In this episode, we're going to organize the bones, learn about custom bone shapes, and implement them. You can find the free practice file for today's lesson on ArtStation and Gumroad. Don't miss it. Alright, let's continue. One of the main responsibilities of a rigging artist is to simplify and clarify the rig for animators to use. At this stage, we're going to organize the bones into collections to make the workspace less cluttered. To do this, go to the Data tab and look for the Bone Collection section. You'll see there's already a collection called Bones. Next to each collection, there are two options. The eye icon controls visibility. The star icon makes a collection solo, hiding everything else. As you can see, the Bones collection includes all the bones. You can double-click on the collection's name to rename it. I'm going to rename this one to All Bones. You can also use the plus and minus buttons to add or remove collections. Let's add a new collection and name it Controllers. This means I'm going to include all the bones that are used to control the character in this collection. I'll select the base, linkage, IK controller, pole target, neck, and shade. Then, click Assign to add them to the controller's collection. To remove a bone from a collection, select it, click Remove, and it'll be taken out of the collection. Using the two buttons, you can select or deselect all bones in a collection. Now, I'll turn off all bones and continue. Next, let's talk about custom bone shapes. You can find the settings for this in the Bone tab, under Viewport Display and Custom Shape. Make sure you're in pose mode for this step. Custom bone shape allows you to change the appearance of bones used to control the rig. A custom shape is actually another object that replaces the bone's visual representation. Let's create the first shape for the base. Switch to Object Mode, press Ctrl A, and from the Curve menu, create a circle. Hold Ctrl and move it to this area. Go to Edit Mode, right-click, and select Subdivide to increase the number of points as needed. Select the points, press P, and choose Separate. Delete the segment, then extrude this point. Select these 2 points, right-click, and set the handle type to Vector. Extrude again to this point. Do the same for the other side. I recommend holding Ctrl to have precise shape. You can also press V for a quicker way to access this menu. To connect 2 points, simply press F to fill the gap. Now, select these points, separate them, and delete them. Press Shift D to duplicate the shape, then press R, Z, and type 90 to rotate it. Select them and press Ctrl J to join. Duplicate it again, and rotate it 180 degrees around the Z-axis. Select everything and press Ctrl J to join. For any unconnected points, select them, press F, then press X, and delete the vertices. Great! We've created the first shape. Now rename it and use the prefix CS to indicate it's a custom shape. Switch to Pose Mode, select the base, and in the Custom Shape section, use the eyedropper to pick the shape we just created. Excellent! As you can see, the appearance of the bone has changed to match the custom shape. In this section, useful settings specific to the shape are now available. These don't affect the bone's data but can be adjusted as needed. I'll set the scale to 2 and adjust it slightly downward along the Z-axis. Alright, that's done. Now it's time to work on the linkage. The linkage is going to rotate around the X and Y axes, so we need to create a shape that represents this movement. From the Add menu, create a Bezier curve. Go to Edit Mode. Change the handle type to Vector. Select these 2 handle points and drag them in this direction to create a curve. Select all the points, duplicate it, and move it higher. Use the Curve Pen tool to draw an arrow in the desired area. Just click on the desired point to start drawing from that point. I'm going to select the Move tool, choose these 2 points, and press F to connect them. Now I select these points, duplicate them, and press B to activate Set Snap Base. In this mode, simply select one point as the base. Then, when I move near any point, it's going to snap to it. Switch to Object Mode and duplicate the entire shape and rotate it 90 degrees around the Y-axis. And press Ctrl-J to join. Finally, rename it as CS Linkage. For the pole target, I'm going to create a cube. Create a Bezier curve and change the handle type of the points to vector. Duplicate it and move it here. Select these points and press F to fill them. Do the same for these points. Switch to Right View. Duplicate all the points and move them here. Duplicate them again and rotate them around the X-axis and move them here. Duplicate them again, move them to this position. Okay, perfect. Rename it as CS Pole Target. Alright, let's move on to the IK controller. Which axis can the IK controller move along? As you can see, it clearly moves along the Z and Y axes. But when it moves along the X axis, the linkage comes out of the pin. Now, I want to add a cool feature to the rig. As you know, we can combine constraints to create new behaviors. Right now, if the IK controller moves along the X axis, the bone goes out of place. But I want to set up a system to prevent this issue and add a new feature. We just need to make the linkage rotate around Y when the IK controller moves, so the rig doesn't deform. The idea is simple. When the IK controller's angle changes, the linkage should rotate to follow it. Select Linkage and add a Lock Track constraint from the menu. Set the target to Luxo Rig, and for the bone, select IK controller. In the track axis, choose the axis pointing toward the target, in this case, Z. For lock axis, select the axis in the middle of the bone, which is Y. Let's test it. The linkage rotates, but it's too fast and hard to control. Why do you think it didn't work perfectly? I press Alt-G to reset the bones to their default positions. Sometimes this doesn't work correctly. This usually happens when you're using constraints. In this case, just disable and re-enable the constraint. The issue is that we tried to make the linkage follow the IK controller, but the IK controller is a child of the linkage, so it should follow the linkage instead. This can be solved with coding, but there's an easier solution. Switch to Edit mode and recreate the bone we had earlier. Select these 2 points and press F to fill them. As mentioned before, this newly created bone is a child of the base, but it has no connection to the linkage. So, make the linkage its child. Rename it to Root. Make the IK controller its child as well, so it no longer depends on the linkage. Now, go to Pose mode for testing. As you can see, it works beautifully. Instead of coming out of the pin, it rotates. Change the color of the root to match the other joints. We're no longer going to use the linkage for rotation. Instead, we're going to use the root. So, remove the linkage from this collection and assign the root to both collections. For the IK controller's custom shape, use the same shape as before. Duplicate it and rotate it 180 degrees around the Z axis. Rename it as CSIK. Alright, we need to create a shape for the root as well. I'll start by creating a circle. Press Tab to go to Edit mode, use Subdivide to add more points. Select these points and press P to separate them. Switch to Object mode with Tab and delete the separated part. Switch back to Edit mode, extrude this point to create an arrow. Hold Ctrl to snap it into place. I changed the handle type to vector. Do the same for the other side. Connect the 2 points using F. I also changed the handle type of these to vector. Select these points, and at the end, click this point to make it the active element. Since the transform pivot point is set to active element, the rotation will occur around this point. rotate these points 90 degrees around the x-axis. Do the same for the other side, selecting these points and separating them with P. Switch to Object Mode and delete the separated part. Switch back to Edit Mode. Select these points and duplicate them. Press B, and using Set Snap Base, set this point as the base and snap it to the other side. In this part of the curve, we can create an arrow showing rotation around the bone's local y-axis. As before, separate these points and delete them. Extrude these points like this. Select the points and press V, then change the handle type to vector. Continue extruding from here and connect the 2 points with F. Separate these points, go to Object Mode, and delete them. Go back to Edit Mode, select those points, duplicate them, and by using B and setting this point as the base, we'll have the same shape on the other side. I also call it CS root. Great! Now the only shapes left to create are for the neck and shade. The neck should rotate around local X, and the shade should rotate around local Z. For both, I'll create one shape that handles their rotations. Create a circle curve. Switch to Edit Mode, duplicate them, and rotate them 90 degrees around X. Rename it as CS Neck. Perfect. All the shapes are ready. Now let's apply them to the bones. Select the root, and in the bone properties, assign the shape we just created. It's because the axes are not aligned. You can fix this from this section. Select the pole target and assign the cube shape to it. Adjust the scale slightly and tweak the location as well. Great. Assign the IK shape as well. Adjust the scale and position a bit. Looks good now. Follow the same process for the neck. For now, we don't need the shade, so I'll remove it from the controllers collection. Excellent. All the shapes have been applied, and as you can see, the rig looks much cleaner now. If you want, you can go to the Data tab, and under the Geometry section, add a bit of depth to the curves to improve their appearance. Looks good now. To keep the outline more organized, select the Luxo rig, create a new collection, and move all the custom shapes into it. Hide the collection to make the viewport less cluttered. These are all the controllers the animator is going to use to bring the character to life. Here we have 3 types of controllers. FK controller. This includes the base, root, and neck. As you know, with FK, you can manually move each bone. When you move a parent bone, all its child bones move along with it. IK controller. This controller allows us to move multiple connected bones by moving a single bone. The software calculates the motion for the other bones based on the settings we've applied. Pole target. This controller lets us adjust the elbow position of the character and change the direction of the IK. Alright, that's a wrap for this episode on Blender rigging. I hope you found it helpful. If you run into any issues or have questions, join our Discord page and let's talk it out. I'll catch you next time.